All right, everyone. Welcome to another Zoom program by the Parsippany Library. This Zoom program is the PEAC Committee Explained, which is the Parsippany Environmental Advisory Committee. Laura McCluskey will be our presenter this evening. Some Zoom etiquette. Please remember to mute yourself. Laura, I'm going to have everyone put their questions in the chat if they would like, or I guess they can just ask the questions as they go. So, ladies and gentlemen, Laura, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Jean Marie. And we are going to start off with an introduction. My name is Laura McCluskey. I am the chair of the Parsippany's Environmental Advisory Committee. I know we're recording this, so hopefully we'll get some of this information out to the residents of the community, which is the goal tonight. And we're going to have a PowerPoint presentation. And what I'll do is go through it with how our committee was established. I'm going to talk a little bit about our history and really, most importantly, the accomplishments that we've done with our committee and things that we've done in the community that have made our committee, be part of the environmental movement of Parsippany over the last really 30 years when we start to look back at the history of it. So whenever you want to start the slide presentation. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so this is just our opening screen, and I did want to acknowledge that this is a presentation of the Green Team. And the Green Team is different than the Environmental Advisory Committee in the respect that the Advisory Committee is a town elected committee, and we work directly with the town council, as our name says, as advisors. The Green Team is a new team, a new movement started with Matt Kavanaugh and Judy Hernandez in the community of Parsippany to really take a very close look at how we do things environmentally. And we're running a program that will get certification for called Sustainable Jersey. And we actually get certified what you would call a green town, which is, really what we want to do as far as responsibility and, doing things for our children and the way that our community is run. And this Green Team focuses on that specifically. So they're running the presentation tonight. Okay. Next slide, please. Just so you know, I'm not able to share my screen at the moment. So at the end of my slides, I will say next slide, and then Jean Marie is assisting me in that. So I appreciate that. This is just an overview of tonight's presentation. We're looking at, first of all, the demographics and the environment of Parsippany, because we really have to know, where we're starting from. Are you an urban environment? Are you a rural environment? What's your population? So you have to look at your community as a whole entity in order to approach it and figure out what you want to do environmentally to make it better. We're then going to look at the Environmental Advisory Committee's formation, when we started, a little bit of our history. We're going to look at our committee's goals. We have a 9-person membership. We have a mission statement that I'll show you, and we're going to look at really what our purpose is, because I said we have a very specifically designed purpose as far as a community entity. And then we're going to look at our accomplishments, because we're very proud of a lot of things that we've done. Some people will know who we are and what we've done, and I think there's a lot of community residents who don't know us yet. So we'll look at what our future goals will be as far as the committee's concerned. And I put in here, please hold your questions till the end. I'm also going to show you a Facebook page that we're starting where we can start communicating back and forth with community members. Okay, next slide. So this is just a look at Parsippany itself, it's 25.35 square miles, and it's huge. And it's not only huge, but it's very oddly shaped, and it has rivers that are boundaries, and we have towns on all sides, and we have all kinds of different types of inner environments that we have to look at. So you really have to look at the town, like I said, as a whole. We were incorporated, by the way, we're the largest town in Morris County in population, but Rockaway Township is the largest town in Morris County in size. We were incorporated in 1928, and by incorporated simply means we established our own government. That was when Parsippany Troy Hills branched off from Hanover and the Whippany area. A little bit of the geological history, because this is really important. The Wisconsin Glacier, about between 15 and 20,000 years ago, we had a block of ice on top of us, right where you're sitting right now, a mile high. So if you could look up and imagine a mile, that is what was going on. And that was a glacier that came down from the north. And as the climate heated up, it started to recede. And as it pulled back, simply because of its weight and its structure, as it receded, it dug out all of these hills and valleys that we have in Parsippany. It left behind a lot of geological specimens from rocks from the north that it had brought down when it came down. And then it rained for a long time, for thousands of years. And this is why we have all of our lakes and streams and rivers. And it's this very intricate web of water, surface water as well as underground water, that we have to be aware of, you know, when we're looking at our township environmentally. We have a lot of lakes, as you know. I've read we've had 23 lakes. I have yet to go out and count them all, but I'm not surprised at that number.
Sorry, Laura.
Lakes, by the way.
Sorry.
Yes.
Something the system is.
Oh, that's okay. I'm still on the second slide, but
For some, I don't, for pity's sake. All right.
There you
I
go.
apologize, everyone. I'm so sorry.
not a problem. Not a problem. I'll just keep talking. We're still on slide number 3.
All right, you keep
Is that okay?
talking.
All right.
All right.
So, because I have it up here in front of me, so I have my own version. Yeah, so we were talking about how these lakes, how these hills and valleys became a very intricate part of Parsippany's, what's called the topography, the layers of the land. And as they filled up with water, we ended up with all of our lakes, and we have some really nice lake communities. We have streams. We have a very big brook called Troy Brook. We're going to talk about a project that we did with that. Really important to take care of Troy Brook, because that is the recharge area for a lot of our underground water, where our drinking water comes from underground. And then we have 2 major rivers. We have the Whippany River and we have the Rockaway River. And they actually meet up by New Road behind the sewage treatment plant. And the Parsippany actually comes from, the name comes from, I hope I pronounce this correctly, Parsippany, which means in Lenni Lenape, means where 2 rivers meet. And again, you can see this intricate interweaving of streams and rivers that really, we have to understand them in order to know how to protect them. And that's where the Environmental Advisory Committee comes in. We have 11 unincorporated, sorry, I saw Jean's cat. We have 11 unincorporated communities. And now with incorporated means we have a government. Unincorporated means we don't have a government, but the town is divided into 11, we can call them subdivisions. And an interesting reason for that is so that each subdivision can have their own firehouse. So you've heard of Lake Hiawatha, Mount Tabor, Rainbow Lakes, Rockaway Neck, Parsippany, etc. We have 11 little tiny communities, and that's really just so everyone can have their own firehouse. Our population is 51,000, and again, we are the most populated town, but not the largest. So our density is, we're quite dense, and that's another thing we have to consider. And then the last thing, the next thing is our elevation, which is really important because we're talking about, I've mentioned a few times, our groundwater comes from underground. And if those of you that don't know how that happens, but below us, and we talked about a giant iceberg above us, below us is a gigantic hole in the ground, and it's called the Buried Valley Reservoir. And it can be as far as, 35 miles down, but it's 35 feet down, but it can be large enough to hold the water supply for Parsippany. And we pump this water upward through a series of wells, which we'll talk about a little bit later too. So our elevation, we're 302 feet above sea level. And that's important to know because if you think of where the ocean meets the shore, that's sea level. Now go 302 feet above that, and that's where Parsippany sits, which actually keeps us close to this aquifer, and it allows us to tap into it. And the last thing on my list of, these are like things you should know about the town to understand its environment, is the weather. We live in a what's called a humid continental climate, and we have hot summers, we have cold winters, we've all experienced them, but these are important things to take into consideration with what we call material science. So materials, when they freeze, materials tend to expand. And when water gets into crevices and water freezes and expands, it cracks roads. This is how potholes form. We could have bridges that are, that need to be looked at because of the wear and tear, because of the weather. Salt, when we salt the roads, that's another issue we have to talk about. So our climate is really important to understand as well. So we have all these different, aspects to look at in order to understand our town. All right, Jean, we're going to the next slide. Are you ready? Okay, there we go. We have an environmentally diverse community. And if you can see the picture of the cows in the barn, Pat, one of our committee members, asked me if that was Parsippany. It is not. It is some rural Wisconsin farmland, but that's up there because that's how Parsippany started. We were farmland. I remember coming here as a little girl to go horseback riding at the apartments that are now on the corner of Beverwick Road and Route 46 was a riding stables, and I would go riding there. But if you look at this picture, we have historical homes, which are important to preserve. We have corporate buildings, which environmentally we look at as using energy, impervious surfaces, car oils on the pavement. There's things to look at in that type of environment. We are a hardwood deciduous forest. So if we took everything away that man has put here, man and woman has put here, you'd be sitting on a rock in the middle of the woods because you're a forest dweller. We live in a forest. We've just built up around it and it doesn't look like it anymore. But it doesn't change the fact that that's what our ecosystem is. On the bottom left, we have lake communities, which are really important because of water quality. And then in the bottom right, we have our suburban homes, which again add to energy use, water use, impervious surfaces. I'm just thinking of it as the environmental committee would look at our town. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Credit where credit is due. Where we've started was with the mayors and the town council. They had a vision back in 1989, which, for environmental issues, that was a long time ago to start thinking about the environment. We've come a long way, but people were just starting to have environmental committees in their town. And Mayor Piori was the first mayor to initiate the committee. And I'll tell you in a little bit where we came from as far as our ordinances. But I just wanted to look at the mayors first. When Mimi Letts came in, and I'm thinking more like about 1995, 1996 was really when our committee became very active. She had a lot to do with saying, let's get the committee into the town council and let's give them projects and things like that. So, You know, I know she's not with us anymore, but she had a big role in our formation. Mayor Luther, again, unfortunately, he's not with us either, but he had a great vision of our town's energy supply. So we'll talk a little later about cool cities, and he did a great program that he initiated. And Jamie Barbario ran with us for 8 years, and Jamie did a lot with the committee, and you know, again, giving us projects and working. And here's where we really started to pick up working with the planning committee and the zoning board, and got more involved with the town on a more like community aspect with ordinances and things. So that was really helpful. And then Mayor Soriano, who we have now as mayor. The thing I remember about Mayor Soriano is that he met with the environmental committee before he was even mayor. He was a mayoral candidate, and he asked to come into one of our meetings and sit in and see what we were all about and talk to us about what he'd be able to do for us and things like that. So that was, you know, again, you know, visionary and really, really helpful to get us started. Okay, we'll do the next slide. So we're part of a what's called a town ordinance. And I'm going to talk about ordinances a little bit later, environmental ordinances that we've actually put into play. But an ordinance in general is really a municipal law. It's a law for a town. It's just a different name, but it has all the legal aspects of a law where it can be enforced, where it's established by the town, it's voted on by the town council, and it's official. So in 1989, an ordinance was set in place from the Department of Planning, Zoning, and Construction Inspections to create the Environmental Advisory Committee. And the original idea of the committee was to advise the town council on developments. If a corporation wanted to come into town and build a facility, we could give the town council, with our background, we could give them a little bit of understanding of things like we talked about before, the well water and the types of environment that we have and the geology of the town, and just give them a little bit of background so that they can make better informed environmental decisions. Our committee, according to the ordinance, we have 9 members, which we have now. We have 9 members, 5 from the mayor and 4 from the town council. And then the committee serves in an advisory capacity. And we're sort of expanding out from that. And I'm glad we're doing this presentation because we're doing a little bit more with the community these days. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. I won't read all of this, but this will be available on the, this PowerPoint's going to be recorded and be made available through the library. So if you're really interested, you can come on back and read through all of this. It's also on we're on the town website under committees, but we just have a basic mission. If you read the first part, it just says to represent the people of Parsippany. That's our mission. We are 9 volunteer residents of Parsippany. You know, you've seen us all walking down the street and shopping in the stores. There's nothing special, but we represent the people of Parsippany in, you know, as best as we can to look at our water and our air and our energy and give a little bit of advice based on our backgrounds and just to help out a little bit when in environmental topics. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide. All right, here we are. I wish I had a picture of everybody up. I didn't have a picture of everybody. You're probably glad about that, but this is our committee. Laura McCluskey, who's me, Judy Hernandez, Michelle Gaynor, Lynn Pearson, Harshad Anjaria, Lisa Plevin, Jean Marie Emler, Tamara Jolly, and Pat De La Fuente. And this is our committee of 9. The committee's gone back and forth with, sometimes we have different members. We've had members leave, members come, but this is our current committee. Our backgrounds include civil engineering, ANJAC, which is the Alliance for New Jersey Environmental Commissions, ANG, which is the New Jersey Alliance for Environmental Education. Our members have backgrounds in cartography, chemical engineering, library specialists, members of the Highland Council, water quality specialists, and environmental science education. And there's a lot more to list. I didn't list them all, but those are, it gives you an idea that we know what we're doing. We have not only the background in environmental issues, but we have the passion because we're volunteering and we're putting our, volunteering to do this. And we believe that it's important that we look at our town's environment and keep track of what's going on and things like that. So, it's a very serious committee. We take our job seriously. Okay, we'll do the next slide. So we're going to look at now what the committee's done over the last couple of years. We have 3 categories: the past, the present, and the future. I'm going to give a short version of the history. If you do want more detail, you can contact us. Like I said, we're going to have our Facebook page up and running. And if you know any of the members by name, you might have a neighbor, or one of us might be, work with you. And, feel free to ask. And we simply want to just do tonight's presentation for informative purposes. Now, the reason I said that was because I didn't know if there was going to be a lot of community interaction. Sometimes people will come on a presentation and have questions and things like that, but we can deal with them later. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so just as we talked about our mayors being really, I can't tell you how important it is that we work with the community. Our mayors are really important because they, help us establish our committee and keep track of our membership. But we also have what's called a town council liaison. And these are really critical people in terms of our committee being successful and being legitimate. We have to have some kind of connection to the town council. So this is a person who would sit on the town council. They're an elected town council member, and they then come to our meetings, which was once a month, and it's a big commitment. And they ask questions, and they bring us projects, and they interact with us. And then they go back to the town council, and they talk to the town council about projects that they want to do or information that they need. And they are our pipeline to the town council and the mayor, so that what we do is not just done, in a room behind closed doors and no one knows about it. Our town council liaisons help us make those connections. And I'm going back to Councilwoman Ann Grossi, who is now the, what is Ann? She's the Morris County Clerk. And Ann was on our committee, was very instrumental in making sure that the town council worked with us. And 2 of the very big ordinances I'm going to talk about a little later, Ann was instrumental in. Councilwoman Rosemarie Agostini. We had Robert Peluso, who was our liaison with the Chamber of Commerce, which was, big help for a lot of issues. And Councilman Vincent Ferreira, again, unfortunately no longer with us, but working with Vinny was a lot of fun. He did a lot of back and forth with Mayor Barbario for us. And we have Councilwoman Emily Peterson, came under Mayor Soriano. And we now have Councilwoman Janice McCarthy, who has, again, been instrumental in keeping our committee together, keeping us with the town council. And the plastic bag ban was, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but played a huge role in getting that started and put into place. So they not only keep a liaison between us and the council, but our council liaisons work with us on a lot of projects. So they make a huge difference. Okay, we'll do our next slide. Okay, we're going to go back in time a little bit. It doesn't seem like 21 years ago, but it was. But one of the big the projects before this is when Ann Grassi sort of took over, and Mayor Letts really let us do a lot with the committee. Prior to that, we were serving in an advisory capacity to the town council, but we weren't doing as much outreach and education and community programs. So this is where those really started to build up. So I'm just going to start here. We worked with Dr. Abrupka. He was with the Rock Curves Extension Program, and he came in and We were looking for someone to help us monitor the quality of the Troy Brook. And the Troy Brook's important because it's a recharge area to our aquifer, and we need to keep it clean. And Dr. Bucket came in and he said that we could look at macroinvertebrates. And these are little tiny organisms that float around in the water, and there's larvae and insects, and you might know crayfish and leeches and mosquitoes and things like that. So what he taught us was that there are macroinvertebrates that are tolerant of pollution, and there are macroinvertebrates that are intolerant of pollution. So if you find a section of Troy Brook and there are the macroinvertebrates that are intolerant of pollution, they can't stand pollution, they die in it, then we know that that water's clean. But you may go down the brook a little ways and come to somewhere where there's a pipe outlet, and you're going to find macroinvertebrates that are tolerant to pollution. They like it, they live in it, they eat it, they love it. And then when we find those macroinvertebrates, we know that there's pollution there. And not only can we identify that part of the brook, but we can sometimes get to the source of the pollution itself. So it was a really important study, and it goes on today. He does it, he comes up every year. He does a report to the Whippany River Watershed Committee. And he comes up, and these are graduate students from Rutgers who come up and do this study every year. But we got that started with the environmental committee, started that. In 2002, we realized that mercury, Carol Adamsbaum, who was a health teacher, came to us and said, you know, we have a lot of mercury thermometers in the science classrooms. And we did, you know, it's just old school versus new school. And so we did a huge thermometer exchange to get the mercury, because, you know, if a thermometer breaks and has mercury in it, and these students were, you know, playing with the mercury, or they were exposed to it, not a good situation. So we exchanged all the thermometers in the science rooms in the middle and high schools. So that was a big program. And again, this community outreach. And then the storm drain stenciling program in 2003, and I know, again, that Pat De La Fuente will remember this, we went around the lake, and actually my environmental club hand glued little stickers, plastic stickers that said, you know, drains to lake, on all of the sewers. And it was the first storm drain stenciling program that was in the town. Now, of course, the town itself does it on all the storm drains, and the new storm drains that are put in now have the no dumping stamped right on them, you know, drains to lake or drains to stream. So that really became a very important part of our community. And if you're walking by a storm drain, don't throw anything down it, because it drains to the lake and you're not supposed to throw anything in there. So that's what those signs mean. It goes right to the river. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So then we got really excited because we wanted to reach out and do more community outreach. So we did an educational lecture series, which was really, it was a lot of fun to do. We were able to get the Parsippany Hills High School auditorium, and we advertised for, we did stormwater management was sort of our focus. And we did a series of lectures there that were very popular. And again, the kids from the environmental club spoke, and we had professionals come in, and that was really a good program. In 2004, we were asked, and this is where, you know, the town council will come to us and ask us to do things. And we were asked to look at a major geese problem that we were having with not only the parks, but certainly the lake areas. And, you know, we researched things like balloons and those silhouettes of dogs that you could put on the lawns and things like that. And eventually, I think they had a company come in and actually got a lot of it cleared out. We haven't had a major problem since then, but we did look into that. That's something that we would do. All right, we'll go to the next slide. We were up to 2005, and this was a big program. And this is one of the ones that Ann was involved in, Ann Grassi. The Wellhead Protection Ordinance. So we had to look at development was starting to become, well, it had been very prevalent in our town, but, you know, as they started building, we had to find a way to protect our wells and our water areas, our Troy Brook, our recharge areas. We're starting to think more about water. And if you think about it, 2005 wasn't that long ago, but you know, that's when we really started to look at things seriously. And the Wellhead Protection Ordinance protects our wellheads are the tops of the pipes that come up from the aquifer, and you have a top on it called a wellhead. And the Wellhead Protection Ordinance gave 3 tiers around this wellhead. So you had a center tier, if you think of concentric circles or a bullseye, you have a center and the well's in the middle of the bullseye. And then an outer circle, which is the second tier, and then a farther out circle, which was the third tier. And in each of these tiers, we only allowed very, very limited development. We had to watch out for things like gas stations that would leak gasoline that would go into our drinking water. We had to think about things like parking rides, because parking lots where cars park all day and oil drips out on the ground, and then rainwater washes that water into the soil, and that may go into our drinking water. So wherever these wellheads are, the areas around them are protected to this day because of this ordinance. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. I actually have a picture of what a wellhead would look like. What you'll see in town are little brick buildings. They look like little brick squares. They're small brick buildings that you'll see. That's where the wellheads are. And it's a pump. It's a fancy name for a water pump. And the picture on the right just shows you that not only do we have our aquifer under the ground, but we have in what we call a watershed, we have topography that slopes into different areas where if it does rain, pollutants and chemicals can wash into certain areas. And we have to look at, again, all of these different aspects. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. All right, so in 2007, we started to get a lot of complaints from lake residents who said, you know what, I'm going swimming. I go down to the lake and there's all this scum on the lake. There's all this green growth and all this algae, and it's disgusting. And, you know, they had lake closings, and people can't swim there. And really just, I mean, the aesthetics of it is really awful, but there's more to it, because not only does it not look nice, but when you get an algae bloom, when you get that overgrowth of algae, where you get that algae blanket on water, when that algae begins to die, it starts to deplete the oxygen in the water. It uses oxygen to decompose. It's anaerobic. So it's using oxygen to decompose, and it's taking oxygen, dissolved oxygen, out of the water. And as we know, that's where fish and other aquatic organisms get their oxygen. So it's taking the oxygen away from fish, and fish would suffocate, just like we would suffocate without air. They're not getting oxygen. So this is a very serious problem. It's called eutrophication. And so we had to look at, you know, when the environmental committee gets a problem, we can look at it we see the problem, but then we have to sort of backtrack and figure out, well, what caused that problem and what can we do to prevent that problem? So the cause of the eutrophication in a lot of our lakes is simply fertilizers. You walk around the lake communities and you've got a lot of beautiful green lawns, but there's a price to pay for that. So, excuse me. So as you put fertilizer on your lawn, you got to look at the bag. Does it have phosphates? Does it have nitrogen? Does it have potassium? Those are your 3 main components of fertilizers. The phosphates are in very high quantity because it makes the grass green. Nitrogen makes the grass green. But if it washes down, then it rains and it washes into the water, it's making your grass grow. It's making the algae grow. So the algae is getting all that wonderful fertilizers from all of the lawns. So this particular ordinance is called the Low Phosphate Fertilizer Ordinance. And these are right online. If you go to the website for the town and you plug this into the search, you'll come right to it and can read more about it. But this is a law. It's an ordinance. It's a law that says that commercial landscapers need to have a very low % of phosphate in their fertilizer. The biggest problem was enforcement. How are you going to go around and look at, you know, a bag of fertilizer in the back of a landscaper's truck? And you can't, one of the things we came up with, we wanted to give out stickers so that the landscapers could put them in their window and say that, I promise to use low phosphate fertilizer. You'd have to register in the town, you'd get a sticker, and then you can go around and we'd look at stickers. And we never really even got that far. We just have to hope that landscapers today know that this is a problem, and we keep on, it's all through education. So we keep on educating people, but it is a law. And that's really important that we have that on the book so that we can always turn to that if it ever really, becomes a big issue again. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. This is a little bit of what I just talked about. The nutrients go into the water, the algae grows, the lake eutrophication, which is the fancy name for an algae bloom. And you get that lake with the covering on it. And not only is it aesthetically not nice, but it's unhealthy. It's detrimental to the aquatic life, and several of our lake communities run by memberships, and they lose that. It's an economic issue as well. So it's a lot of issues. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. All right, I mentioned this earlier. Mayor Luther worked with our committee on a program called Cool Cities, and it actually came out of the United Nations, and it was a program to get mayors of all the cities in America, which was a lot of cities, get a mayor. It was a mayoral protection agreement that every mayor made a commitment that they would start to reduce carbon emissions. And this was in 2008. And so Mayor Luther loved the idea. He was very environmentally conscious. He worked with our committee, and he signed the agreement. And in doing that, we opened up a whole program of emissions studies that we did in the town, and they would go into like the water department, and we went into the recycling department, and we went into the town hall, and we looked at the type of light bulbs that they used, and we looked at the air conditioning systems, and we looked at the type of cars and vehicles that the township was using. It was a big study of the emissions of our town. And then based on that number, you could start lowering that by putting in LED lights. We could put in, we could start to look at electric cars. We could start to look at thermostats that shut down at night, more at lower temperatures to save energy. And we could start looking at all these different aspects to, just not use as much energy. It didn't really change how the town ran, and it certainly didn't change anything that any of the different municipal departments had to do. It just, we used less energy, and it really was a good program. So that worked out nice. We started that program here. We'll go to the next slide. All right, so this was a big thing. I live in Lake Hiawatha, and I was here during this. So in 2011, we had Hurricane Irene, and I think that we think Hurricane Sandy was the big hurricane, but it wasn't, because Hurricane Irene was financially more destructive to New Jersey than Sandy was. And as you know, as you might know, but Lake Hiawatha flooded, and there was a lot of damage in town. There was trees down and flooding and all kinds of damage. But in lower Lake Hiawatha, we had a big issue because the reservoir, the Booton Reservoir, overflowed, and it flowed down over the Rockaway River Trench and into lower Lake Hiawatha. And it came up 5 blocks. It came up a block from my house. You're talking 2, 3, 4 feet of water in people's homes. It happened at 11 o'clock at night. I was here, I heard all the commotion. I looked out at my street. My street was flooding. The water was coming up. There were people in boats. The rescue teams were coming down from the rescue squad were coming down in boats and going down into houses and getting people out of their second stories. It was nuts. And all of this, started to take place. Quick funny story, Mayor Barbario was in a boat going down there with Greg Schneider was there from the recycling department. They were going out in the boats, the town people, picking people up. And Mayor Barbario got back, and he put the boat on it was on the street. He put the boat on the street, and a rabbit jumped out. And he was going, well, whose rabbit is that? You know, who's, and we're just like, no, that's just like a random rabbit that jumped in the boat and came up from the water. So it came up that quickly. But part of what we did as the Environmental Advisory Committee, we were asked to look into this, and we did a very in-depth report. Scientifically, from my viewpoint, it was really interesting. We looked at the climate, the rain, the saturation of the ground. We got the pressure valve information from the reservoirs to see when the pressure went up, when the pressure went down. We talked to the people from all different parts of the community to put this report together. It's actually available online on the township website, and you can read it. And we certainly, you know, again, if the community has any questions about it, we certainly could go back and revisit it. But that was something that we were commissioned to work on, and we did a very big report on that. So, okay, the next slide. All right, so we're up to now. And some of the projects that we're working on, NonGardens, a couple of years ago, we went into a beautiful garden that we have in our community that is actually on the Forbes list of the 15 most beautiful gardens in the country. And garden clubs come from, well, they did, we're working on getting it reestablished, but at this time when we started the project, garden clubs from other states would actually come and see this. And Mrs. Dunn was the woman who, she actually lived there. She planted all these plants that she picked up in her travels, and she created this incredible garden on her property. So we did a plant documentation of that. That was one of our projects. We'll go to the next slide. We always are at the fall festival. Sometimes they put us by the falafelas. Sometimes they put us by the rides. Well, you know, wherever we go, we're always there. We haven't missed a year yet. And, you know, we like to have our booth there and information and talk to people as you come by. Next slide. We actually, our town, the township of Parsippany Troy Hills, this was a big accomplishment for our town. We became part of what's called the Highlands Conformance, and we are now part of, you see that little shaded area on the top of the New Jersey map. The Highlands is a very, very delicate environmental area that needs to be protected, because that's where our water supply is. And we need to be very careful of overdevelopment. We have to be careful of chemical spills. We have to be careful of impervious surfaces, which are roads and parking lots and things like that. So the Highlands Council is an organization that monitors everything that's going on in this gray shaded area. And if a town is a part of the Highlands Council, we can get help from that organization to help us monitor our town. This is, you know, just Parsippany. We want to look out for not only our town, but for everyone else who's in this area. So it's part of how we work with our community, our surrounding communities. Okay, next slide. We do work with the Parsippany School District. We've had presentations. We're going in and working with the environmental clubs. We work with the science classes. We've done 2 major projects. The Thistle and a Whistle, which was a few years ago. That was sponsored by Pfizer. They did all the financial sponsoring of that. And the Wild in Parsippany, which the Environmental Committee did 2 years ago. But the best thing about that, we have 10 K-5 elementary schools, and they're all separate. You would think we'd have 10, you know, we have 10 completely separate schools that never see each other. So both of these projects took place in all 10 schools simultaneously on the same day. And it was a nice way to sort of thread them all together and, you know, help with that community outreach kind of thing. We'll go to the next slide. We're working with Montville, and we're working with Mountain Lakes right now, both on projects. I just wrote this little statement. We have a border, but air, water, trees, pollinators, and wildlife do not have a border. So we have to start thinking of the bigger picture when we start thinking about environment. It's not just Parsippany, and it doesn't just end at our boundaries. Okay. All right, our next slide. Ooh, the plastic bag ban. So, and this is an ordinance, which means it's a law. And the plastic bag ban says that stores can no longer give out single-use plastic bags. Now, I know you'll go to a store and you'll see single-use plastic bags all over the place. So we're working on that, and we have to get a more efficient education program out, and we will get back to this, because not only is our ordinance in place, but the state ordinance kicks in next year, and it's going to happen. You know, you got to bring a cloth or a reusable bag. We're going to stop using single-use plastic bags. It's done. It's a law. Nothing to see here, you know, so we'll be working on that. I know that everybody has different opinions about it, but it's not an opinion, because we've made it an ordinance in our town for a reason. The single-use plastic bag days are sort of over. Next slide, please. And we work with the green team. And the green team is, as I said at the beginning of the program, a separate entity. It is not the Environmental Advisory Committee. It is, again, a group of volunteer residents who want to help our town environmentally. And the green team's role is to create a program of getting the township certified as a green town under the Sustainable Jersey. And they're looking for volunteers. We'll have that information on our Facebook page if you're interested. There's all kinds of opportunities to work with them. So they'll be out there. Okay, and next slide, please. I sort of like this slide because it says sunrise or sunset. I don't know, is it going up or down? What does it depend on? We have to start thinking, you know, the direction we're going to be taking. I know I get a little bit of passionate about things like the plastic bag ban, but what direction are we going in? Are we going in the direction where we made the ordinance and we're going to let it fall through the cracks and we're not going to do anything about it? Or are we going in the direction where we made the ordinance and we're going to educate people and we're going to start thinking more about the future generations, and we're going to say, yeah, we're going to stop. I'm going to bring a cloth bag because I'm going to do it for you know, for generations to come. So, all right, our next slide. These are our programs that we're now working on. I'm optimistic about our farmers market. I put that first. So we're going to do that. We're going to bring the farmers market back to town because that's such a lovely community affair. And I know that, you know, we're just coming out of COVID and just sort of getting our feet wet of going out a little bit, but, you know, it would be nice to have an open air community gathering place as this starts to dissipate a little bit. We have the green team. And that's, again, the Sustainable Jersey Gold certification. So we're excited about that. The Environmental Committee is working with them. We're going to launch our Facebook page. It actually is up and running, but on the official Earth Day, I thought April 22nd would be a good launch day for that. That's a picture of the actual page there. It's called the Parsippany Environmental Advisory Committee. We're not hiding anything. You can find us, just Google it. We're going to work on green infrastructure through the town. I know the green team has a big ideas for this, and I think it's great. You know, because every time you build something, like for example, when we built the park and ride out by the post office, you know, where you can park your car and get on the bus and go to New York, you could do two things with that. You could pave that over and make 25,000 parking spaces and just leave it and have all of that oil and gas and pollutants run off, you know, just run off into the streets for flooding, or the oil run into the ground. Or you could build it and put in what's called green infrastructure. You can put in different slopes, and you can put in the center of the in the center of the paved area, you could put little cement areas that have trees in them and ground and dirt, so that water can go back into the soil and recharge. And there's all kinds of new ideas that are coming out where you can build with the environment. instead of creating more problems. So that's what green infrastructure means. Next slide, please. We've got flower plantings on mediums. This was sort of one of our grandiose ideas, but wouldn't it be nice to come into Parsippany and drive down Route 46 and instead of having all that overgrown grass, have a row of trees or a row of wildflowers? You know, you go to Beverly Hills and they got the rows of palm trees. No, I'm thinking big, but it would be nice to drive down Route 46 and to see a medium that you know tells people you want to stop in this. This is a beautiful town. You want to stop here. It would bring in tourists. It would bring in people to shop here, and it would bring in companies to work here. So it really would make it nice. Food waste reduction and composting is another project that we have in our future working on. And the last one is to upgrade from a committee to a commission. I put a little graduation hat there because if we ever grow up and become a committee to a commission, just real quick, the committee is what we are now, but we don't have as much legal jurisdiction we don't have much power as we would have if we became what was called a commission. A commission is then run more on a state level and a more legal aspects to that. So we are looking to upgrade to that at some point. Okay, next slide, please. So that's our program. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about the history of our Environmental Advisory Committee. You know who's on it, you know what we do, and you know that we're here. And we've been here for literally decades. And we're going to hopefully start getting more out into the community. Our Facebook page, I'm excited about that launching. And as I wrote on here, we're here for you, your family, and for future generations of Parsippany. So we thank you for joining us tonight. And if you do have any questions, you will have an availability to contact us through the Facebook page. And happy Earth Day, everybody.